All right, Jeff, we're super excited to have you on Inside Athletic Training for our 30th episode. Definitely look forward to talking to you about all things athletic training in your career. You're currently an assistant athletic trainer with the Atlanta Braves organization. Huge role with the club. We'll definitely get into that soon. But first, let's share a little bit with the listeners about your background. So let's take it back to the beginning. Let us know where you're from, what sports you're into growing up, and also how you found your passion for athletic training.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me on. I'm originally from the Midwest. I was the youngest of 10 kids, and we moved around a lot, about every 4 years growing up. My dad was in manufacturing management. So I was born in Indianapolis, Indiana, and we lived in southern Indiana till I was about 5. Then we moved to just north of Lansing, Michigan. And then we moved about 4 years later to Detroit, to the suburbs of Detroit. So I was in Detroit from about 4th grade to the middle of 8th grade. And then we moved to Iowa City for 2 years, and then moved back to Detroit and was back in the suburbs of Detroit for my junior and senior year of high school. So I really kind of called Detroit home, having spent majority of 4th through senior year of high school there. So that's kind of what I consider home. But the playing sports was always big for me growing up. I played baseball and basketball from the time I was young all the way through high school. And I played football in junior high and a couple years of high school before giving that up just to play the other 2 sports. And, but with the 2 years we spent in Iowa City, when I was a sophomore in high school, we took a class that was a career class. And part of that was you took a test that showed you what your interests might line you up with as a career. And then you had to do a report on that career and interview somebody in that career. And so athletic training was something that showed up, and I honestly didn't even really know what it was at that time. I mean, I knew what trainers, I'd seen trainers at the baseball all-star game be introduced or whatever, but I didn't really know that much about it.
Sure.
And so I chose that to do my interview, and I ended up interviewing the wrestling trainer at the University of Iowa, who was a legend in the years where they won all their national championships, and his name was Dan Foster, and he really kind of confirmed and sold to me that it was a career that would be, I think, fitting for me and probably very interesting to be able to try to continue in a career in something that I was always enjoyed, sports, and that I could, combine that with my career was really kind of inviting. And that's kind of where I originally got the interest. And then, so it came time to go to college, and it was like, well, I guess I'll try to go to a school that has athletic training at least and check it out. So I ended up looking into a couple schools. I actually looked back. We had moved back to Detroit, but I looked at the University of Iowa, and then I looked at Indiana University and visited there, and that's where I ended up.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you kind of stumbled upon athletic training in a unique way. Like you just explained, got into the wrestling aspect with a mentor there, and definitely a unique way to get into it. I know, not many of us know what we want to do when we grow up when we're little, but a lot of us want to stay in sports. So it's really cool how you were able to find that. And now you've had such a great career filled with, World Series title, a number of awesome stops along the way. Definitely a ton of accomplishments throughout your career in athletic training. First, I want to talk a bit about what it's getting into the world of athletic training. In baseball specifically, there's so many different paths that lead to the big leagues and help people break into the game. For some context, prior to Atlanta, you spent time with the Toronto Blue Jays, Kansas City Royals. You spent time in positions like as a rehab coordinator, minor league athletic trainer. So you've really seen it all. Through all that time, what memories and experiences getting into the game and in minor league baseball kind of come to mind when you think about your career in the early days?
So when I was at Indiana University, one of my classmates had he and I both liked baseball, and I worked baseball my senior year at Indiana. And so we used to talk about baseball a lot, and he had done an internship with the Cincinnati Reds at one point in the summer of our school. And so when we were coming out, he knew I liked baseball, and he thought, minor league baseball might be a thing that, we could get into. And so it's kind of always in the back of my mind. And then I graduated in December that year. And so my initial plan was to go to grad school that coming fall. But having graduated in December, all of a sudden I got actually a one of the PBAS newsletters, and it kind of rekindled my thought of working in baseball. And so I ended up thinking, what the heck, I got time to fill before grad school would start.
Sure.
Let me send out resumes to all the teams. So I sent resumes to all the teams. This was like early January of 1992. And, thinking, spring training less than 2 months away. I don't know that they'll even have openings. Well, I ended up hearing back from about 6 teams, and 3 of them had like short season opportunities, and 3 of them had full season A-ball positions available. And so I went through that process of I thought, well, if I'm going to give it a try, I'd rather do a full season than a short season. And if I don't like it, then I get out and go to grad school and do something different. But I thought it'd be a good experience to try. And so it came down to, taking the job with the Kansas City Royals right out of school. And I went to spring training that year, just, having just finished school, and was fortunate to get that full season job. I think, in most cases, people get hired and they start in the extended spring or the rookie leagues, which is fine. It's a great place to start, but sometimes it takes some time to get to a full season job. And I was able to do it right away. I took a job, and it was in Appleton, Wisconsin, and started there, it was great. I was a Midwest person, so I had never been to Wisconsin of all the times we had been around and moved around the Midwest, but I took the job and just fell in love with it. And obviously I've ended up working my way up through the Royal system. I spent the last 9 years in AAA, which was Omaha, Nebraska. And then I was able to go to the big leagues with Kansas City for 2 years. After that, I had known my first year in AAA was George Poulis's last year in AAA. Okay. He was in Las Vegas. I was in Omaha. So we knew each other a little bit from that. And then the 2 years I was in the big leagues with Kansas City, and he was in Toronto as an assistant trainer there, we knew each other a little bit too. So then in 2011, they had a rehab coordinator position opening that was based out of Florida. And I thought, shoot, this sounds like a good opportunity. It's working with somebody I really, really respect and admire. And so I was able to, I took that job, and then I ended up being in Toronto for 8 years total. 6 of the years I was a coordinator based out of Florida, and then 2 years in Toronto as an assistant trainer. And then George came to Atlanta in 2018, and then he brought me over here in 2019. And I was a coordinator here in 2019, and then been in the big league since 2020.
Yeah, that's a heck of a ride. Like we said before, you've seemingly done it all in baseball, which is really cool to see. And you mentioned George Poulis, who we'll get into later. I really want to kind of talk to you about your relationship and how special that has been with George. But to kind of piggyback off your experience in the minor leagues, a lot of our guests have talked to us about the importance of being able to make mistakes as a young athletic trainer in the minor leagues before, you get your shot in the big leagues. Do you feel the same way? Can you kind of expand on the importance of your time in the minor leagues and how that kind of shaped you as an athletic trainer?
Yeah, no question. I think that's super valuable. I think like I said, that first year, I'm right out of school and I get thrown to, you got your own team, you're in Appleton, Wisconsin, away from everybody after a month of spring training. And I think it was great for me because it put you in a position where you had opportunities to learn and grow and do things. And, you're going to make some mistakes, but learn from them at a level that isn't as important. And you just, but doing that, you're right away, you're the guy, you're dealing with the injuries, you're talking to the doctors and those experiences all through the way. I spent 3 years in Lansing, Michigan as the athletic trainer there. And the doctor setup we had, it was a brand new affiliate at that time. And the doctor setup, it was like a big league doctor setup. We had an MD orthopedist, a DO orthopedist. We had the dean of the osteopathic medical school was our general medicine doctor. So just a wealth of knowledge that I was able to be around and have people, to ask questions and that, and all the way through, just at every level, having people to, you learn, but then you have other people in the game you talk to, and it's a really valuable way to come up.
hmm And during those early years, you mentioned that people are really important in kind of showing you, how baseball works, what it's even like to be an athletic trainer in the game. Like you said, you're right out of college, you really know nothing at that point. Did you have specific role models? I know you work with George in the big leagues and that matter, but did you have specific role models when you were coming up in the minor leagues who kind of stood out in your life and really showed you the way?
Yes, I would say it started back in college with our curriculum director at Indiana University was John Schrader, and he and Kip Smith, who was our head football trainer, kind of really he kind of got you on board as an athletic trainer and the way as you're going through your schooling. And then getting into baseball, there was Nick Swartz was our head trainer in Kansas City, and he really, I think he was my mentor initially, having he'd been a trainer with them for a long time, and I was this new young guy, and he really just open arms, like took me in and really tried to just help me in any way he could. And then I think just some of the PBATS people, going to I remember going to the PBATS course my very first spring training. I was in near Baseball City or near Orlando, Florida. And like within the first week we got there, we're like, they said, "Oh, you guys are all going over to this continuing education course over in Tampa." And we went over, and it was at the hotel there in Tampa. We spent 2 days there, and it was what is now and still, or was then and still is, the Florida seminar for PBATS. And it was, Jamie Reed and Kent Bickerstaff and Richie Bancells were the leaders of the PBATS at the time. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, those were guys that you looked up to, and kind of, you realized that how much they were into helping educate the young trainers, that, those of us that were just new and into the game. And it was great to see.
Yeah, I think one thing about PBATs and the kind of older iconic members that I've found in working with you all is that everyone cares so much about the development of the younger group, and that's kind of what makes the society special and keeps it going in such a strong way. So it's cool to hear you kind of echo that statement as well. Speaking about kind of advice and caring about the younger athletic trainer, looking back on your career, the mistakes you made, the great accomplishments you've had, World Series championship, things of that nature. If there's college students out there listening who are looking to get into athletic training in professional baseball, is there any advice you would have for them, whether that's a skill, a personality trait, or just any advice overall about getting into the game?
Yes, I think there's a few things. I think personality traits, I think you have to have flexibility and adaptability in this game. I mean, there's so much from year to year, from team to team, your staff, players, you just really have to be able to be adaptable to situations and communicate well. I think there's great ways to get your foot in the door are the internship programs with PBATS, and a number of those, you can really get, I think that's the best way I didn't do that, but I think it's really grown into a program that really gives you a great opportunity to see if you get the real feel of what it is, in the day-to-day grind. Because it's a lot of hours, it's a lot of time, but I kind of used that first year. Like I said, when I got into the game, I'm like, well, I'm going to see if I like it. I just jumped in, and here I am 31 years later, still doing it. So, but I think those internships are super valuable. We've had a number of great interns over the years, and we have one now here in Atlanta, and it's a great way to get involved. I think the other thing is, if you happen to have an opportunity to work baseball when you're in school, I know when I first came out and all those teams were calling me, a lot of them called and said, "We saw that you worked baseball. Your resume came across their desk, and we saw that you worked baseball." And I didn't realize at the time I worked baseball partially because that's what I liked, and didn't know I wanted to do it, but I really liked the sport, and didn't know that it would really benefit me and make my resume stick out, because it is different. Every sport's a little bit different. And, even having that time working with the sport while you're in school is very, very good to have.
Mm-hmm. And so almost 30 years in the game, like you mentioned, and in 2021, you were part of the Atlanta Braves staff and team that, like I mentioned, won the World Series. Just an amazing experience I couldn't imagine. Talk to us a bit about what that was like. I mean, how the season progressed, any things that stood out compared to other seasons, and just what it was like for you and George and Mike to kind of get to the mountaintop there.
It was an incredible year. I mean, it really, we came off of the 2020 season having been in the NLCS and the COVID year, so we thought we had a you thought you had a pretty good team coming in, and then we just kind of never really got out of the gates early. We were just kind of hanging in there. I don't even think we got to above 500 still after the All-Star, after the trade deadline. And, we lost Ronald Acuna right before the All-Star break to an ACL injury, and we were just kind of scuffling. And then we lose him, and you're just thinking, what the heck? And then our, Alex Anthopoulos, our general manager, made some moves, and everything just kind of worked, and guys really gelled. And, once we got over the 500 winning percentage, it just kept going. Our August was awesome, and then we just were that hot team that just kind of took it into the playoffs and won the whole thing. It was just an incredible experience. It's something you wish that, I always tell people, it's something you wish that everybody could experience, because it was truly magical and unbelievable, the whole ride.
Mm-hmm. Of course. And to expand a bit on that championship run, we all see the players on the field competing, but wondering what it's like for a staff of athletic trainers taking care of the players, and how that feels. Do you guys feel extra pressure as the run deepens through October? Is it more excitement in the training room, or what kind of atmosphere, do you see change within the training room and the clubhouse when you guys are taking care of players?
I think it's more excitement. I mean, I was on teams in Kansas City and in Toronto where we didn't make the playoffs, or you knew you were out of the playoffs way earlier in the year, and versus knowing you're in the hunt even, at this time of year and moving forward. I think the excitement kind of takes over. You can see it in the staff, you can see it in the players. I mean, it just really becomes you're playing for games that really matter the last, couple months of the season, and it's exciting. I mean, I think it's, there's pressure but I don't really think about that as much as you just kind of jump on board, and everything is just kind of moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And in 2021, your staff, Mike Frosted, George Poulis, you guys also won the Major League Baseball Athletic Training Staff of the Year award presented by PBATS, a huge accomplishment as it's voted on by your peers, which is incredibly special. What did it mean to win that award with George and with Mike and with guys who you go back to Toronto and even further from? What was it like to kind of share that with those guys?
It was great. I mean, it was, those two guys, and you're in the trenches with them all those years, from the time back in Toronto and here, and to win that award and to get, it's an honor to have the PBATS members vote that. And so that on top of the World Series and just winning it with people that you've really, been in battle with for years and years. And it really was a special addition to the World Series for sure.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I'm, to tie up talking about the World Series and stuff like that in 2021, really interested to hear your perspective just on finally getting that ring. You, like we said, it's been 30 plus years in the game for you. You've played a ton of important roles, both in minor and Major League Baseball. Did you kind of take some time to reflect on your entire career at that moment, winning a ring, or was it kind of like, you're kind of the person who does that often and doesn't need that gratification from a title?
No, it was great. I mean, to think back and to realize, like, even all the people that have been in the game, from players even guys on our staff, we have a real veteran coaching staff, and some of these guys have been in the game, 40, 50 years and never won a World Series. So to see that and to realize that, about how special it is and how fortunate and blessed we were to be a part of that is, and how many people spend forever in the game and don't get that opportunity. So
yeah,
honestly, early in my career, I don't think I ever dreamed I'd win a World Series. I mean, I was happy to be in the game and, hope to get to the big league someday, but I don't know that I really ever, it's something you always would love to think you're going to get, but I don't know that it really seemed real. So when it really happens, it was just incredible. Like, and to have that, as I'm not somebody that, I don't wear my ring. I mean, honestly, I don't think I've worn it once, but it's such a memory and something to have that just you'll always have and always be a part of. George and Mike and I used to always say, we're world champions forever. I mean, nobody can ever take that away. And there will be all the memories of that 2021 season and 2021 team. We were right there and a part of. So that really was special.
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, you guys had such a good run, and like you said, that's yours forever, whether you whether you wear the ring or not. I'm sure it's a bit heavy on your finger at this point. But so moving on a bit to talk about the Braves this year. You guys are clearly one of the favorites for a lot of people come October. Do you find you're seeing a lot of similarities with the club this year compared to 2021, or since you guys didn't have such a hot start in 21, are things much different than you experienced that year?
I think it's been similar in that just the vibe of the team and the group of players and staff we have is the best I've ever been around. I mean, it's just such a good family feeling, and everybody pulls for each other. And I mean, that's been the same since 2021. I mean, we won the World Series. Last year we started out slow and came back and were able to win the division within the last 2 weeks of the season. And then this year we've started out hot and have never looked back. So I think but it's just been the group of people we have. It's very similar just in the clubhouse feel and the personalities. And, it's just somebody gets hurt, the next guy steps up, and it's just, and from Brian Snicker, our manager, and the coaching staff, like, it's just, you hear many people just saying it's just a special thing we got going on here right now. And it's just, it's really fun to be a part of.
Absolutely. And one other, special thing we've talked about, couldn't have you on the show without mentioning, is your relationship with George Poulis. So George leads the staff in Atlanta. For those who don't know, he was the head athletic trainer in Toronto for seemingly a very long time. You've been with George, on his staff and working with him for forever, it seems like. What has it been like coming up with George and learning from him, and what makes him kind of the guy who is very capable of leading these staffs?
A funny story. I said earlier that my first year in AAA was George's last year in AAA, and he was in Las Vegas. I'm in Omaha. We have a day game. We're playing in Omaha, and they're leaving after the game, and we end up having a brawl with our teams that day. and we ended up, there was an injury at second base where, as they got in the brawl, his guy kind of was wrapped up with somebody, and our second baseman went to pull his player apart and actually tore the guy's pec.
Oh,
and
no.
So it was a significant injury. And so George is calling over to me, hey, do you happen to have a doctor here? And, it's my first year in Omaha. It's like it's early May. I've been in AAA for a month, and
Sure.
It's a day game, which you don't usually have doctors. And so I was able to call our doctor, and he did come down to the stadium. And so that was kind of our first interaction. And we still laugh about that our teams brawled, and we try to, laugh about it. But then from there it was the, work or knowing him then in the big leagues when we were on opposite teams, to then when he called me and wanted to bring me on board. And it's been 12, 13 years we've been together now total between Toronto and here. And he and I get along great. I mean, he's like one of my best friends, and but he's a great leader. He just really makes everybody in the sports medicine department and in the clubhouse. He makes everybody it's a real good environment. We always have a thing we put up on the board, trying to win the East. And we put that up there from day one. It's just kind of the joke. I mean, the players know it, the staff, we all know it. It's just trying to win the East is our motto. And here we are winning the East again. So it's just kind of he does a great job, and he's been great to work with and spend the time. I couldn't thank him anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and anyone that knows George knows that, one thing I've noticed is, when you're talking to him and spending time with him, he really cares, and he's present and means well to everyone that he's speaking with and around. So I couldn't imagine working with him all this time. Must be just such a great experience. Getting into more about your role with the Braves as the assistant athletic trainer. I know a lot of people who spend a ton of time in the big leagues, they wish they could still be doing more hands-on work with players than they used to back in the minor leagues or in the early days. What is your role kind of filled with on your day-to-day? Is it a lot of working with the players, administrative work, working with George in the front office? How does your day kind of work, on a normal home game?
So on a normal home game, we kind of all have like a somewhat of a mixed role. Like we come in, we kind of get things ready to start the day. We have a staff meeting with our whole staff in the sports medicine department, just to kind of run through what we need to talk about. And then we kind of just, it's kind of all hands on deck for treatments. We all get involved in the hands-on stuff and getting people ready. And then, George does majority of the administrative, front office, coaching staff, updates. And, I do majority of the ordering of supplies and just making sure we've got everything we need. And one of the other athletic trainers, our other assistant athletic trainer, Nick Flynn, he does the work comp stuff and getting the billing things organized. So it's just kind of a group effort. But we all do still do a lot of hands-on. And then come game time, usually myself and Nick Flynn are in the dugout for probably the first 5 innings, and George is upstairs. That's when he gives him a lot of time to do some of that administrative stuff and work on some programs with our physical therapist and that. And then he comes down to the dugout and one of us checks back upstairs and then we kind of finish the game and then end the game treatments. And then we send our report out and that's the end of the day. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely a grind for athletic trainers in baseball, 162 days like that, but great for our listeners and younger athletic trainers and perhaps in college and high school to kind of learn what it looks like for you guys. Another aspect of athletic training that I think really, really often goes unnoticed is the impact of the profession on your family and how it's so important to have that support system at home. Can you share with the listeners a bit about what it's like throughout your career as your family has grown, and also how you've been able to balance being the best athletic trainer you can be, but also making time for things at home?
Yes, it definitely takes a special person to have as a wife, and then as your kids come into it. I always tell people that I never knew anything any different. So I got into baseball. My wife and I went to high school actually together, and so once we got married young, like after my first year in baseball, we got married, and then we had our first kid within the first couple of years of being married. So we've had, kids and married for a long time, which it definitely takes a special person to be with you that through all that. But we always tried to make home where home was or where my affiliate was. So when I was,
Mm-hmm.
when I was when we were in Lansing, like I said, I was there for 3 years. That's when we bought our first house, and we thought, let's just be here for the 3 years. I wasn't worried about moving up every level. I wanted to be able to be with my family. I didn't want to leave and go to, the Texas League and leave my family in Michigan. I really didn't want to do that. I didn't think that was fair to my wife or the kids. And so we always, those 3 years, we said, we're going to be in Lansing, and we were very happy to be there. We were 2 hours from both of the grandparents, and I think, when I went on the road, it made it that much more doable that she could take the kids and go see their side of the family. And then when we moved to Omaha, when I got the opportunity to go to AAA from A-ball, we kind of, same thing, 1999, I got offered that job, and we moved to Omaha blind. Like, we had never been to the city and just thought, my oldest son's going into kindergarten. We got to get him in school, and I want to be there. I don't want to be in Omaha and have you guys in Michigan. So we moved to Omaha. I had 2 coaches, managers through the minor leagues that were from there and always talked good about it. So I thought, it's got to be a good Midwestern city. And so we moved there and ended up living there the next 14 years. So that was probably the best thing we ever did, because it was my time in Omaha and my first couple of years in the big leagues with Kansas City. And then when I took the job with Toronto and got offered the position in Florida, I was like, do we want to move to Florida? So I went to Florida for that first season before we just moved all the way across the country, because we really enjoyed Omaha and the kids were all wrapped up in their activities and that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to Florida, and I said, let me try it for the first season and just make sure it's the right fit. And I went there, and then, we end up following and moving there and been in Florida ever since. So I always tried my best to live where I was working, just because you're on the road enough and spring training and everything. And it's hard enough if you live where you are. And if you don't, I just didn't want to do that for any long periods of time.
Yeah. And that's super interesting and an amazing perspective on your end. But, I know that has to be difficult. So how did you kind of embrace being where you were and throughout all of those stops in the minor leagues? when you're in Omaha, really staying present and, like you said, living there and making it home. What was it about you or your mindset that helped you stay patient and not kind of look forward to, well, I got to get to the big leagues, I got to get to AAA, I got to get to the next stop? How did you kind of stay present in those moments?
I just always, I tell people this all the time. Like when I was a coordinator, I tell all our trainers every year, I said, enjoy the ride, enjoy where you're at. Cause I said, if your only desire is to get to the big leagues, I said, there's a good chance you're going to end up disappointed. Cause I said, honestly, as you're sitting there talking to 10 to 15 athletic trainers, not everybody's going to get that opportunity. There's just limited spots. And so I would always tell them, I said, I can honestly say when I was in A-ball, I loved it. When I was in AAA, I loved it. When I was a coordinator, I loved it. When I was in the big leagues, I loved it. I never had that need to move every year and feel like I was moving up. And I think maybe part of that was back then there was only 2 trainers in the big leagues and there wasn't a lot of movement. So, you're like, and there was a couple times back then too, I had an opportunity to go from Lansing A-ball to AA in Wichita. And I told him I didn't want to do it because I had a house in Omaha, in Lansing at that time. And I thought, I don't want to be away from my family. And I knew we had one more year left in Lansing. And then it was that next year that I had the opportunity to go. I told our farm director, I said, if it came to AAA, I'd make the move. And then sure enough, a year later, he said, you want to go to Omaha? And I said, yeah, I'll go to Omaha. So then it was like, okay, I told him I'd do this. We got to do it. So I just always, like I said, I enjoyed every level and I told all our young athletic trainers that, and I still do. I tell our interns that now, that if you're only getting into the game to make the big leagues, I recommend you do something different because it may not happen and you might be disappointed.
Yeah, there's only a few of those positions in the world when you think about it. It's a pretty glamorous and from the outside at least, it's a pretty glamorous and admirable job that you guys have. And back in the day, like you mentioned, there's only 2 per team, 60 athletic trainers in the big leagues worldwide. So like you said, it's the odds are against you, but clearly your persistence and patience really kind of made you who you are today and got you to where you are. So awesome to hear those stories from you. One thing that makes, I think, the place you live and the place you work special is the people you're around. We talked a bit about George and his role in your life and your career. I know Nick Flynn is on your staff there in Atlanta and many others. So at this time, I kind of want to give you a few minutes just to recognize some of the people who make up the Braves athletic training and sports medicine staff and help you make your job easier every day.
Yeah. So besides we got George and myself, and then Nick Flynn's our second assistant athletic trainer. And then we have 2 physical therapists, Marcus Ahrens and Nick Valencia. And they're both here in Atlanta with us. They alternate traveling. So one of them travels with us and the other one stays back with the guys we're leaving back to do rehab. So they alternate that, and that gives us another great set of hands to have. 2 of them when we're at home and one when we're on the road. And then we have a dietitian, Patrick O'Brien, and then we actually have 3 strength coaches this year. We had 2, Brad Scott and Jordan Wolf, and then this year we added a 3rd, Paul Howie, and he primarily stays back with the physical therapists that staying back to give them somebody to progress, the rehab guys into the weight room and doing some of those activities that they need to do. And it's worked out great. It's given the PT that's back that extra person. They're not getting run, it's just hard. It's hard to manage it all by yourself. And so that's given us that addition of the staff has been good, but it's just a great group of, we really work well as a team. And I'm super impressed with just all of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you guys definitely do a great job down there in Atlanta, and you're right in the hunt this year. So I'll be excited to kind of watch you guys the rest of the way. Well, Jeff, I really appreciate your time today. It's been awesome talking to you, learning more about your career and kind of how you approach athletic training as a profession. To wrap up today's episode, we're going to finish with a quick Q&A segment that we call Extra Bases. So I'm going to ask you 4 quick questions to let you share some insight into your favorite things about athletic training and your career. So we'll kick it off at first base. Unfortunately, Atlanta is not allowed to be your answer for this question. We've had more than, I'd say half of our guests say they love the Atlanta training room so much. But what's your favorite athletic training room to work in the big leagues outside of your homeroom?
I would probably say the new Texas ballpark. It's the thing I like. I like the training rooms that have their own little office space for us and that are a good working area. But then the thing nice about Texas too is you're right next to the weight room. You can see into the weight room, and you're also steps from the dugout, which is always great for ducking in and back, back and forth. And if you have an injury, you're in easily with the player. And so I would say Texas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've heard the proximity and office space are, like you mentioned, are two of the most desirable things. So cool to see Texas doing a great job down there. Moving on to second base, you guys get to watch baseball from the greatest seat in the house every single night. What's your favorite big league stadium to watch a game from the dugout?
It's funny. We've talked about this in the dugout to the point where I've actually made a list on my phone of my rankings of ballparks, and I've got Fenway number one. Based on really just the history and everything about it. But a close second is St. Louis. I love St. Louis. It's great atmosphere, great view. The fans are great. And it's always been one of my favorites as well.
Yeah, great baseball town in St. Louis. So many good stadiums. And obviously, like you said, can't beat the Fenways and Wrigley's of the league as well. So really, I think everyone's on the same page there. Moving on to third base. Outside of the actual games, what's your favorite city to visit on the road?
I think my favorite city is Chicago. It's a great city. It's you're on the lake. I've got 4 siblings that live in the area too. So when I'm there, I get to catch up with a number of relatives but it's always is one of my favorite cities. And New York I like as well. There's a lot to do there, and I've kind of really grown to like New York. But I think Chicago is my number one. Yeah,
can't beat the lakefront in Chicago in the summer, and you guys are lucky enough to avoid that in the winter, so that always makes things better. Moving on to home plate. Last question for today. Like you said, you've been in baseball for 30 plus years. You've seemingly done it all. But when you were first coming up, getting to the big leagues, did you have a welcome to Major League Baseball moment as an athletic trainer?
Yeah, I think I got 2 that really come to mind. The first was, before I officially was on the Major League staff in 2007, I got called up in September to spend the last month with the team. And the very first day I got to the ballpark, I drove down from Omaha to Kansas City. I walk in the ballpark. I've never been, worked a Major League game yet. And as I get on the elevator to go down to the clubhouse, the only person, we're playing the New York Yankees, who back then were, they were winning all their championships. Yeah. This was 2008 or 7. So I get on the elevator, and the only person on the elevator with me is Mariano Rivera. And I'm, wow. I said, this is it. I'm not only here, but we're playing the Yankees. Mariano Rivera is like right here. And it was kind of a wow moment. And then I think the other one was opening day, my first year in the big leagues that following year, 2008. We growing up in Detroit, and then opening day, we opened in Detroit. And so it was a day game in Detroit. I grew up a Detroit Tigers fan. And so it was just like, it was a beautiful 75-degree day, which doesn't happen very often in early April up there. And so it was just like, you're standing out on the line and hearing the national anthem on the city and ballpark or not to say the ballpark, I went to Tiger Stadium, but the city and the team that I grew up watching mostly. And now here I am working in the big leagues, for the first time was really special.
Yeah, that's amazing. Those are the exact type of stories we've heard of. Truly welcome to the big league moments. Mariano Rivera, legend, just you and him sitting in the elevator. Couldn't have been more of a welcome to the show moment. So that's really cool to hear. Well, Jeff, thanks so much for joining the show today. Really appreciate you coming on and wish you, George, Nick, and everybody else on staff the best of luck throughout the rest of the season.
Thanks so much, Sam. Appreciate it.
All right, Jeff, we're all good here. That was awesome, man. I appreciate your time. Really cool stories. Yep. Didn't know you were a Midwest guy. I grew up in Milwaukee and lived in Chicago for about 8 years. So good to hear that too.
Nice. Yeah. I loved Appleton. We went there that first year, and it was, and that whole league, just that, travel in the Midwest League, and it was, I loved it.
Yeah, can't beat it in the summer for sure. Well, I appreciate you. Tell everybody down there we say hi, and me and Neil are always here if you guys need anything.
Awesome. Thanks, man.
All right, take care, Jeff. Talk to you later.
Yep.
Bye.